Greetings, cozy knights. Lower your swords and rest by the fire. Tonight, we journey through 135 hidden dragon facts from the world of Skyrim. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're listening from tonight and which games you'd like me to cover next. But for now, let's get cozy and journey through the ancient secrets of dragons together. Let us begin our journey into the heart of dragon lore, where every fact reveals another layer of these eternal, unchanging beings. Dragons are not merely animals or beasts, but fragments of time itself, children of the god Akatosh. According to ancient Nordic legends, dragons existed before time began, dwelling in the Dawn era when the world was young and wild. They are considered by many scholars to be Edric in nature, meaning they share essence with the divine beings who created Mundus, the mortal plane. This divine heritage sets them apart from every other creature that walks, crawls, or flies across Tamriel. The very name dragon varies across cultures and languages. In their own tongue, they call themselves Dov or Dova, meaning quite simply dragon. The ancient Nords knew them as Dragokon or Dovra, terms that carried both reverence and fear. In the ancient Elnafex language, the tongue spoken in the earliest days of Tamrielic history, they were known as Akka, a name that connects them directly to Akatosh, the dragon god of time. Some texts even suggest that Akavir, the mysterious continent to the east of Tamriel, means Dragonland in Elnafex, hinting at an even deeper connection between dragons and that enigmatic realm. Dragons possess true immortality, a concept that goes far beyond mere longevity. When a dragon's physical body is destroyed, its soul remains tethered to its bones, unable to pass on to any afterlife. This is why Alduin, the World Eater, was able to resurrect his fallen brethren during the events of the Fourth Era. He did not truly bring them back to life in the conventional sense. Rather, he restored flesh to bones that had never truly died, calling souls back from their strange limbo to inhabit their physical forms once more. Only a dragonborn, blessed with the soul of a dragon in the body of a mortal, can permanently end a dragon by absorbing its soul, preventing any possibility of resurrection. The intelligence of dragons surpasses that of most mortal races. Archmage Shalidor, one of the greatest wizards in Tamrielic history, described them as eternal, immortal, unchanging, and unyielding. They possessed not only cunning and tactical brilliance, but also deep philosophical understanding. Dragons are capable of intricate political maneuvering, long-term planning spanning centuries, and engaging in debates that blur the line between discourse and combat. In their society, there is no distinction between arguing a point and fighting for dominance, for both are conducted through the Thuum, the voice. Despite their remarkable intelligence, dragons are slaves to their nature in ways that even they cannot fully control. Every dragon possesses an innate, overwhelming urge to dominate. This desire for conquest and submission of others is not merely a personality trait, but a fundamental aspect of what they are. Parthenax, the wise dragon who leads the Greybeards, speaks of this truth with melancholy. He admits that the desire to dominate is so powerful that overcoming it requires constant, eternal effort. Even after thousands of years of meditation and discipline, he still feels the pull of his domination instinct. This is why dragons are inherently distrustful of one another, for each knows that every other dragon harbors the same unstoppable need for supremacy. Dragons are also susceptible to intense feelings of pride and melancholy. Their pride is legendary, to the point where challenging a dragon is almost certain to provoke a response. They cannot resist proving their superiority when questioned. This pride is both their greatest strength and a potential weakness, for it can be exploited by clever enemies. The melancholy they experience seems tied to their immortal nature and their awareness of cycles that mortals cannot comprehend. Some scholars theorize that dragons experience a form of existential weight, carrying the burden of endless existence and perfect memory of ages past. In ancient times, dragons spoke only in moments of what they called true need. This was not because they lacked the ability to speak constantly, but because every word a dragon speaks carries power. Their language, Dovazul, is not merely a means of communication, but a fundamental expression of reality itself. When a dragon speaks with intent, the world listens and responds. This is the basis of the tomb, the dragon shouts that can summon fire, freeze time, or tear the soul from a foe. For dragons, casual speech and magical incantation are one and the same. The relationship between dragons and dragonborn is complex and fundamental to understanding both. A dragonborn is not simply a dragon in mortal form, though they possess the soul of a dragon. Rather, they are beings uniquely positioned between two worlds, combining mortal free will with draconic power. Dragons recognize dragonborn as kin, but also as threats and challenges. When a dragonborn slays a dragon and absorbs its soul, they do not destroy that soul, but integrate it into themselves, becoming more powerful and more draconic in the process. Some dragons view this as natural, a form of dominance they can respect. Others see it as the ultimate heresy. Dragons originally came from either Akavir or Atmora, and ancient sources conflict on this point. Some legends claim they flew from the frozen north of Atmora alongside the first human settlers, while others insist they originated in Akavir before migrating west to Tamriel. It is possible both accounts hold truth, for dragons have existed since before recorded history, and their migrations across the world likely occurred multiple times over countless ages. What is certain is that dragons were already well established in Skyrim by the time humans arrived in significant numbers during the late Merethic era. According to ancient dragon tradition, when two dragons meet, the elder always speaks first. Age among dragons is a matter of when they came into being, not simply how long they have existed in current awareness. Alduin claims to be the firstborn of Akatosh and the oldest of all dragons, though interestingly, other dragons like Paarthurnax are also considered ancient and powerful. The concept of dragon age is complicated by their existence before linear time was fully established. Dragons do not reproduce in the conventional biological sense that mortals understand. There are no dragon eggs, no dragon young. Each dragon was created, not born, during the Dawn era. They emerge fully formed from the currents of time when the world was young and wild. This means the total number of dragons has been essentially fixed since the beginning. When dragons die and are not resurrected, their kind diminishes permanently. This makes the extinction events in dragon history all the more catastrophic, for every lost dragon cannot be replaced by new generations. The famous phrase spoken by Paarthurnax about the nature of good and evil contains layers of meaning. When he asks the dragonborn whether it is better to be born good or to overcome evil nature through great effort, he speaks from personal experience. Every moment of every day, Parthenak struggles against his domination instinct. He has chosen the path of the way of the voice, channeling his power into philosophy and teaching rather than conquest. This choice requires constant vigilance and inner battle. His question is not merely philosophical, but deeply personal. Dragons possess a unique relationship with death and time, because their souls cannot truly die unless absorbed by a dragonborn. They experience death differently than mortals. When slain, a dragon enters a strange twilight state where consciousness may persist, even while the body lies as bones and dust. Ancient texts hint at this possibility, though scholars debate the exact nature of this death state. Based on how quickly resurrected dragons regain awareness, some researchers propose that dragons can perceive the flow of time even while entombed, making their centuries of burial an extended dream rather than true oblivion. Others counter that such awareness would be a torment beyond imagining, and that dragon consciousness more likely fades into dormancy until resurrection. The dragon language, known as Dovazul, represents the foundational layer of reality in Tamriel. According to the beliefs of the ancient Nords and interpretations by modern scholars, when Akatosh created the world and established time, he did so through the dragon language. Every word in Dovazul corresponds to a fundamental concept or force in nature. This is why the Thu'um works. Speaking in dragon language does not merely describe reality, but actively shapes it. Scholars who study linguistic magic call this tonal architecture, the use of sound and meaning to manipulate the underlying structure of existence. Dragon names are never arbitrary labels, but rather titles that describe the dragon's nature and deeds. A dragon may be nameless until it accomplishes something worthy of recognition. Once it earns a name, that name becomes a three-word phrase in the dragon language that encapsulates its essence. For example, Odavin translates to winged snow hunter from the words Od-a-ving. Dunever means cursed never dying from Duanevir. These names are not given by others, but rather earned and claimed by the dragons themselves. The structure of dragon names follows strict linguistic rules. Each name consists of 3 monosyllabic words from the dragon language. When spoken together, these 3 words form a shout unique to that dragon, allowing dragons to call to one another across vast distances. Each dragon's name thus serves as both an identifier and a magical signature. No 2 dragons can share the same name, for each name represents a unique combination of characteristics and accomplishments. Some dragon names can be interpreted in multiple ways depending on how the syllables are divided. Saratar, for instance, can be read as either Sarotar, meaning phantom word servant, or Sarotar, meaning mighty servant. Both translations carry truth, and dragons often appreciate such linguistic complexity. The ambiguity is intentional, reflecting the layered nature of their identities and accomplishments. The Thu'um, or dragon shouts, operate on principles that defy conventional magic. Unlike spells that draw power from magicka and require careful gestures and components, shouts draw power directly from the user's life force and will. When a dragon shouts, it imposes its understanding of reality onto the world, forcing existence to conform to its words. This is why the Thu'um can accomplish feats impossible through normal magic, such as slowing time itself or tearing souls from bodies. For dragons, there is no distinction between debating and fighting. Both activities use the same tool, the voice. A philosophical disagreement can easily escalate into physical combat without any change in the mode of discourse. Dragons simply continue their arguments with greater intensity until one proves dominant. This cultural quirk makes dragon society fundamentally different from mortal civilizations, where words and violence occupy separate spheres. The dragon language influenced Nordic culture so deeply that many ancient Nord heroes learned to use the Thu'um themselves. During the Dragon War, this knowledge became weaponized against the dragons. Parthenax, having betrayed his kind to side with humanity, taught humans how to use the dragon language to create shouts. This teaching gave rise to the tongues, Nordic warriors who could fight dragons with their own linguistic magic. The legendary heroes Jurgen Windcaller and Isgramor were among the most powerful tongues in history. Each word of power in the dragon language contains immense meaning compressed into a single syllable. The word Yol, for instance, means not merely fire, but embodies the essence of fire, its heat, its light, its consuming nature, and its transformative power. When a dragon shouts Yol, it does not summon fire, but rather commands fire to exist in that space, because fire is part of what Yol means at a fundamental level. Dragon language has its own alphabet, a series of angular runes that resemble cuneiform writing. These runes are found carved on word walls throughout Skyrim, each wall containing one word of a three-word shout. The shape of the letters reflects their meaning, and the very act of reading them can convey power to someone sensitive to their nature. The Dragonborn can learn words of power simply by reading these walls, as their dragon soul instinctively understands the true meaning encrypted in the runes. Some phrases in the dragon language have meanings that do not translate easily to common speech. The words Dremyol Lok, which Parthenax uses as a greeting, literally translate to peace fire sky. However, the deeper meaning is something like greetings. Let us speak calmly with the warmth of fire under the open sky. Or perhaps, I come in peace with the warmth of kinship under the witness of the heavens. The compression of complex concepts into simple phrases is characteristic of Dovazul. The pronunciation of dragon language requires careful attention to vowel length and guttural sounds. The sounds R and R are both long, open A sounds, but R is formed more deeply in the throat. A and A represent different diphthongs. U and U likewise carry distinct meanings. A mispronounced word might fail to produce any effect, or worse, might produce an unintended effect. This is one reason why mortals struggle to master the Thu'um. Their vocal apparatus is not naturally suited to producing the full range of dragon language sounds with perfect precision. Dragons can understand and speak other languages beyond their own, but they typically consider such languages inferior and use them only when dealing with mortals. A dragon conversing in Cyrodiilic or Nordic is essentially condescending to use baby talk. They do this not out of necessity, but as a form of dominance, demonstrating their ability to master even the crude languages of lesser beings. When dragons speak to one another, they always use Dovazul, for no other tongue can properly convey the depth of meaning they wish to express. Composite words in Dovazul follow specific rules about which element is prominent. In the word Vulonkrein, meaning moon, Vulon, night, is prominent, and Krein, sun, is secondary, thus creating a light in the night. Reversing the order to Krein Vulon, would mean eclipse, creating darkness where the sun is. This system allows dragons to create new concepts by combining existing words in various orders, making their language both efficient and infinitely expandable. The dragon language contains words for concepts that do not exist in mortal languages. There are terms for specific types of dominance, particular forms of ancient magic, and states of being that mortals cannot experience. Conversely, the dragon language lacks words for concepts that dragons do not value or recognize, such as mercy in the mortal sense, or equality. These gaps in vocabulary reveal the fundamental differences between dragon and mortal psychology. Dragon priests often adopted names that were words or phrases in the dragon language, though they themselves were not dragons. Moroke, for instance, means glorious in Dovazul. Rakop means rage. Volsung means horrific. These priests took on dragon language names to identify themselves with their masters and to claim a fragment of draconic power for themselves. The practice demonstrates how deeply the dragon language penetrated the culture of the dragon cult. When a dragon dies and its soul is absorbed by a dragonborn, the memories and knowledge contained in that soul are transferred. Each dragon carries millennia of experiences, observations, and learning. As the dragonborn absorbs more dragon souls, they inherit this vast library of ancient knowledge, though accessing specific memories requires effort and focus. Some dragonborn report dreams filled with ancient images and conversations in the dragon language, as the absorbed souls slowly integrate with their own consciousness. The Thu'um has limits even for dragons. While incredibly powerful, shouts require a recovery period between uses. A dragon cannot constantly bombard enemies with fire breath or unrelenting force. There must be a pause while they gather the necessary focus and power for the next shout. Additionally, more complex shouts with multiple words require more time and effort to execute. In combat, dragons must balance the power of their shouts against the vulnerability created by the time needed to speak the words. Every dragon possesses a unique voice, recognizable to other dragons. Just as humans can identify individuals by their voice, dragons can distinguish each other by the specific timbre, pitch, and resonance of their Thu'um. This becomes especially important when dragons call to each other across long distances, using their names as shouts. A dragon hearing its name shouted in a particular voice immediately knows which other dragon is calling. The anatomy of dragons is a marvel of both natural evolution and divine design. Their physical form combines reptilian features with structures that seem to defy the normal limitations of biology. A dragon's body is simultaneously incredibly dense and surprisingly light, allowing them to achieve flight despite their massive size. This apparent contradiction comes from the unique composition of their bones, scales, and internal structure. Dragon bones are hollow like those of birds, but far stronger than any mortal material. The bone structure contains a lattice of incredibly hard mineral deposits arranged in patterns that maximize strength while minimizing weight. A single dragon bone is strong enough to be forged into weapons and armor, and items crafted from dragon bone are among the most durable equipment available. When a dragon dies, its bones remain intact for millennia, showing no signs of decay or weathering. Dragon scales are composed of a substance similar to keratin, but far more resilient. Each scale is teardrop-shaped and overlaps with its neighbors, creating a flexible armor that covers the dragon's entire body. The scales grow continuously throughout a dragon's existence, with newer scales forming beneath older ones. When damaged, scales can regenerate over time, though this process is slow. The scales are arranged in a staggered pattern, with chest scales being the largest to protect vital organs. The coloration of dragon scales varies widely between individuals and seems to correlate with both age and elemental affinity. Younger dragons typically have brown or bronze scales. As they age, their scales may become darker, taking on colors like red, white, or even purple. The color is not merely cosmetic but indicates something about the dragon's elemental nature and power. Fire-breathing dragons often have reddish scales, while frost-breathing dragons display white or silver coloration. Dragons possess 3 talons and 1 vestigial dew claw on each foot. The talons are incredibly sharp and strong enough to grip stone without dulling. The dew claw, though smaller and seemingly less useful, actually plays a role in how dragons write their language. The angular runes of the dragon alphabet are shaped to be carved efficiently with a combination of 3 main talons and 1 dew claw, explaining why the letters have their distinctive appearance. A dragon's wings are perhaps the most impressive aspect of their anatomy. The wing structure resembles that of a bat, with a thin membrane stretched between elongated finger bones. However, dragon wing membranes are far more durable than bat wings, capable of withstanding tremendous force and air pressure. The wings attach to the body at 4 points, providing stability that 2-point attachment could never achieve. This 4-point connection distributes the enormous forces of flight across the dragon's entire skeletal structure. The wingspan of an adult dragon averages between 30 and 50 feet, though this varies considerably between individuals. Elder and legendary dragons possess even larger wings, necessary to lift their increased body mass. The size of a dragon's wings is not purely proportional to its body. Older, more powerful dragons develop disproportionately large wings, giving them greater aerial agility despite their increased weight. Dragon wings serve multiple purposes beyond flight. They can be used as weapons, though dragons rarely resort to this because their wings are more vulnerable than the rest of their body. The wings can also be spread to make the dragon appear more threatening when trying to intimidate an opponent. In cold weather, dragons wrap their wings around their bodies for insulation. Some scholars have observed dragons using their wings to create powerful gusts of wind by beating them without taking flight, though this appears to be a rare behavior. Flight mechanics for dragons remain partially mysterious, while their wing size and bone structure account for some of their aerial capability. Physical calculations suggest that dragons of their mass should not be able to achieve or sustain flight through purely natural means. The most widely accepted theory among scholars who study draconic physiology is that dragons use a form of passive magical levitation to supplement their physical flight capabilities. This could imply that the Thu'um unconsciously create small pockets of altered gravity around their bodies, reducing the effective weight that their wings must lift. However, without the ability to examine the living dragon's internal processes, this remains educated speculation rather than confirmed fact. Dragons breathe through both their nostrils and mouth, and their respiratory system is adapted for producing dragon shouts. The lungs are enormous, capable of holding vast quantities of air. This is necessary not only for flight, where sustained breathing is essential, but also for producing extended shouts. The structure of the throat and mouth acts as a resonating chamber, amplifying and focusing the power of the Thu'um. The mechanism by which dragons produce fire or frost breath has been debated by scholars for centuries. Dragons do not have separate organs for producing these elements. Instead, when a dragon speaks words of fire or frost, the Thu'um itself manifests the element. The breath weapon is essentially a sustained shout, with the dragon's will and voice transforming the air itself into the desired element. This is why different dragons can breathe different elements. They are simply using different words and concepts in their shouts. Dragon eyes are large and highly developed, with exceptional vision at all distances. They can see clearly both in bright daylight and near total darkness. Their eyes contain reflective layers that gather ambient light, much like a cat's eyes. The eye color varies between individuals, but often correlates with scale color. Interestingly, some ancient dragons are described as having eyes that glow with inner light, suggesting that their vision may incorporate magical components as well as physical structures. The musculature of dragons is extraordinarily powerful. The jaw muscles alone can exert enough force to crush stone and metal. The largest muscles are located near the chest and shoulders, powering the wings. These flight muscles represent a significant portion of the dragon's total body mass and require constant circulation and oxygenation to function. This is why dragons must breathe so heavily during extended flight or after intense combat. Dragons possess a unique internal anatomy that includes both standard organs and mystical components. They have a heart, lungs, digestive system, and other expected organs, but they also possess what some scholars call a soul organ, or Thu'um core. This structure, located near the heart, serves as the focal point for a dragon's magical nature. When a dragon shouts, the Thu'um core resonates, channeling the dragon's will into reality. This organ is also what holds the dragon's soul to its body after death, preventing the soul from departing to any afterlife. Dragon scales can display a remarkable range of sheens and textures. Some dragons have scales that appear almost metallic, reflecting light like polished bronze or steel. Others have scales with a matte finish that seems to absorb light. Elder dragons often develop scales with distinctive ridging or patterns that make each dragon visually unique. The texture and appearance of scales can provide information about a dragon's age, health, and battle history. Beneath the scales, dragons have a tough, leathery hide that provides additional protection. This hide is similar in texture to crocodile skin, but much thicker. Even if scales are somehow removed or damaged, the hide beneath provides significant defense against weapons and magic. The hide is particularly thick around vital areas like the neck, chest, and belly, places where a dragon might otherwise be vulnerable. Dragons shed scales occasionally, though not in the same cyclical pattern as reptiles shed skin. Individual scales may fall off when damaged or when the dragon grows enough that new, larger scales need to replace older ones. Dragon scales are valuable precisely because they are rare. A dragon may shed only a handful of scales per decade. The scales retain some of their protective properties even after separating from the dragon, making them ideal material for armor and shields. The tail of a dragon is not merely decorative but serves several important functions. It acts as a counterbalance during flight, allowing for precise aerial maneuvers. In combat, the tail can be used as a powerful weapon capable of smashing opponents or destroying structures. The length and flexibility of the tail varies between dragons, with some having relatively short, thick tails, while others possess long, whip-like tails that trail behind them like serpents. Dragons do not have external ears, but instead have internal ear structures covered by scales. Their hearing is exceptionally acute, allowing them to detect sounds across a wide range of frequencies. They can hear the flapping of bird wings from miles away, or detect the vibrations of creatures moving underground. This acute hearing also makes them sensitive to the specific frequencies and tones of the Thu'um, allowing them to understand the full meaning of shouts even at great distances. The teeth of dragons are designed for both tearing and crushing. They possess multiple rows of sharp teeth in the front of the mouth for gripping and tearing prey, and massive molars in the back for crushing bone and hard materials. Dragon teeth are incredibly hard, comparable to diamonds in durability. When a tooth is lost, it does not regenerate, but dragons have so many teeth that losing a few makes little difference to their ability to feed or fight. Dragon blood is hot, much hotter than mammalian blood, and contains unusual properties. When spilled, dragon blood can cause burns to those who touch it. The blood carries not only oxygen and nutrients, but also seems to conduct magical energy throughout the dragon's body. Some alchemists claim that fresh dragon blood can be used in powerful potions, though obtaining such blood is obviously extremely dangerous. The internal body temperature of dragons remains constant regardless of external conditions. They are warm-blooded creatures, but their baseline temperature is much higher than that of mammals. This natural heat seems connected to their ability to produce fire breath, and may explain why dragons are often found in cold regions. They prefer environments where they can radiate excess heat without discomfort. Dragons seen in volcanic areas or other hot locations are usually those with fire affinity, who find such temperatures ideal. Dragons have a dewlap or throat pouch that can expand when roaring or preparing to unleash a particularly powerful shout. This expansion increases the volume and resonance of their voice, making their Thu'um even more devastating. The dewlap also serves to cool the dragon's body, as the thin skin there allows for greater heat dissipation when needed. The spines and horns that adorn a dragon's head, neck and back are not merely decorative. These growths serve as sensory organs, detecting changes in air pressure and temperature. They also provide additional protection for vital areas along the spine. The size and arrangement of horns and spines vary greatly between individual dragons, with some sporting elaborate crests, while others have relatively modest protrusions. Dragon feet are digitigrade, meaning they walk on their toes rather than flat-footed. This design, common in predators, allows for greater speed and agility. The powerful leg muscles enable dragons to pounce on prey or leap into the air for flight. When landing, dragons can absorb tremendous impact forces through their legs without injury, allowing them to land from great heights with ease. Dragons do not have forelimbs separate from their wings, unlike the classic four-legged, two-winged dragon depiction found in some other fantasy settings. Instead, their wing structure incorporates what would be the forelimb, with the wing fingers extending from modified arm bones. This means that when on the ground, dragons must use their wings like crutches if they need to move, creating a distinctive four-point gait. However, dragons are primarily aerial creatures, and spend little time crawling on the ground if they can avoid it. The Merethic era, before written history began, represents the age when dragons ruled supreme over Tamriel. During this ancient period, dragons were not yet the tyrants they would become. Initially, they ruled with a form of benevolent authority, or at least with indifference to mortal affairs. Dragons spoke only in times of true need, and their servants, the dragon priests, governed fairly and maintained peace between dragon and human. The transformation of dragon rule from benevolent to tyrannical remains a mystery, though most scholars blame Alduin, the World Eater. Alduin, the firstborn of Akatosh, was meant to serve a cosmic purpose, to end each world cycle so that a new one could begin. Instead, he chose to forsake his destiny in favor of conquest. Rather than devouring the world as intended, he decided to rule it, perverting his nature and dragging the other dragons into tyranny alongside him. Under Alduin's leadership, dragons claimed dominion over all of Skyrim and beyond. They did not seek to build empires or manage kingdoms directly. Such tasks bored them. Instead, they demanded worship and absolute obedience, delegating the actual work of governance to their dragon priests. The priests, granted terrible power by their dragon masters, enforced the will of the scaled overlords with an iron fist. The common people were reduced to little more than slaves, living only to serve the dragons and their chosen representatives. The dragon cult, which had begun as a somewhat benevolent religious organization in Atmora, transformed into an apparatus of oppression. Dragon priests demanded ever greater sacrifices and tribute from the population. Those who displeased the priests or failed to show proper reverence faced horrible punishments. Stories from this era speak of entire villages being destroyed for minor infractions, their inhabitants slaughtered or offered as living sacrifices to appease the dragons. Bromjunar, in what is now Yalmarch Hold, served as the capital of the dragon cult during its height. The massive temple complex of Labyrinthian was built there, serving as a meeting place for the highest-ranking dragon priests. Within this fortress temple, the priests would gather to discuss matters of governance, share knowledge of magic and dragon lore, and make decisions that affected all of Skyrim. The ruins of Labyrinthian still stand in the Fourth Era, haunted by ancient magic and the undead servants of the dragon cult. The high-ranking dragon priests received great rewards for their service. The dragons granted them masks of power, artifacts that defied the laws of time itself and bore mighty enchantments. Each mask was unique, named after the priest who wore it, or perhaps the priests were named after the masks they received. These masks became symbols of authority and terror, signifying the immense power wielded by their bearers. Even millennia later, these masks retained their enchantments, making them some of the most powerful artifacts that can be found in Skyrim. Not all dragons supported Alduin's reign of tyranny. Some grew troubled by the cruelty inflicted on mortals, or perhaps they simply disagreed with Alduin's abandonment of his cosmic purpose. Chief among these dissenters was Paarthurnax, Alduin's own lieutenant and younger sibling. Despite having committed terrible atrocities himself during the early years of dragon dominance, Paarthurnax experienced a change of heart. He came to question the nature of dragon rule and the suffering it caused. Paarthurnax was not alone in his doubts. A small number of other dragons also grew to oppose Alduin, though their names and numbers remain largely unknown. These rebels recognized that Alduin's path led not to the glory of dragonkind, but to inevitable conflict with the increasingly resentful mortal population. They understood that humans would not suffer tyranny forever, and when rebellion came, it would be catastrophic for everyone involved. The spark that ignited the Dragon War came when human chieftains and warriors began to organize resistance. The exact moment of the rebellion's beginning is lost to history, but we know it involved both human initiative and dragon support. Parthenax made the momentous decision to betray his own kind, choosing to teach humans the Thu'um. He revealed to mortal tongues the secrets of the dragon language, showing them how to use shouts as weapons against their oppressors. This act of teaching was revolutionary. For the first time, humans could fight dragons with their own linguistic magic. They could shout with a voice, imposing their will upon reality just as dragons did. The playing field, while not leveled, was no longer impossibly tilted in the dragon's favor. Human heroes arose who could master the Thu'um. Legendary figures like Jurgen Windcaller, who would later found the Greybeards, Ysgramor, the Great King, and others whose names echo through Nordic history. The Dragon War raged across Skyrim for an unknown period, possibly decades or even centuries. Dragons fought alongside their dragon priests against rebellious humans aided by turncoat dragons. Great battles scarred the landscape. Dragons fell from the sky, their massive bodies crushing forests and villages alike. Humans died by the thousands, burned by dragon fire or torn apart by talon and fang. The war's brutality exceeded anything Skyrim had seen before or would see again until the Oblivion Crisis of the Third Era. Despite the terrible losses, humans gained ground. Each dragon they slew weakened Alduin's forces. The knowledge of the Thu'um spread among human warriors. More importantly, humans possessed something dragons lacked: the ability to adapt and change. Dragons were immortal and unchanging, bound by their nature. Humans were mortal and flexible, capable of learning new tactics and strategies. What humans lacked in individual power, they made up for in numbers, innovation, and sheer determination. The turning point in the Dragon War came with the creation of a new shout, Dragonrend. 3 legendary heroes, Feldir the Old, Hakon One-Eye, and Gormleth Golden-Hilt, somehow discovered or created words that would forever change the balance of power. Dragonrend was not merely a weapon, but an existential attack on dragonhood itself. The shout forced dragons to comprehend mortality, making them understand what it meant to be temporary, finite, and vulnerable. For eternal beings who had never truly known death, this was a devastating psychological and magical assault. The 3 heroes used their newfound shout to challenge Alduin himself. They lured the World Eater to the throat of the world, the highest peak in Tamriel. There, on that sacred mountain, they confronted him with Dragonrend. The shout worked, pulling Alduin from the sky and forcing him to understand mortality for the first time in his existence. The shock and pain of this comprehension weakened him, allowing the heroes to fight him on more equal terms. However, even Dragonrend could not kill Alduin. He was too powerful, too fundamental to existence. Gormley and Hakon fell in battle, leaving only Feldir alive. In desperation, Feldir resorted to a last, desperate measure. He revealed an Elder Scroll, one of the most powerful artifacts in existence, tools used by the gods themselves to write destiny. With the Elder Scroll, Feldir read words that cast Alduin forward through time, banishing him from the present moment and sending him into the distant future. The banishment of Alduin marked the end of the Dragon War. Without their leader, the remaining dragons were thrown into chaos. Many were slain by vengeful humans who had suffered so long under dragon tyranny. Others fled to remote mountains and deep caves, choosing exile over continued conflict. Some few surrendered, pledging to live peacefully and never again tyrannize mortals. The age of dragon dominance was over, though dragons would never be completely extinct from Tamriel. The dragon priests, now without their masters to protect them, faced the wrath of the populace they had oppressed. Many were hunted down and killed. Others chose to entomb themselves, believing that Alduin would one day return to resurrect them and reward their loyalty. These priests achieved a form of lichdom, sustaining their existence through magical means even in their sealed tombs. They demanded that their followers be buried with them, creating the Draugr servants who would guard their resting places for millennia. Not all remnants of the dragon cult were immediately destroyed. Some groups went into hiding, maintaining their faith in secret. The last major stronghold of the dragon cult was discovered in 1E 140, roughly 140 years into the First Era. High in the Gerald Mountains, the monastery of Forolhos housed a hidden community of cultists led by the dragon priest Ragot. When King Harold's army, commanded by Captain Skorm's Snow Strider, discovered the monastery, they laid siege to it. Rather than surrender, Ragot and his followers chose death. In a final act of defiance, the entire cult committed mass suicide, drinking poison, while Ragot sealed himself into the temple's inner sanctum. This grim event marked the effective end of the dragon cult as an organized force, though isolated believers and hidden shrines would persist in the most remote corners of Skyrim for centuries more. The aftermath of the Dragon War shaped Nordic culture for all time. The Thu'um became a sacred art, taught and practiced only by those who understood its power and danger. The Greybeards, led eventually by Paarthurnax himself, established their monastery on the throat of the world. There they taught the way of the voice, a philosophy of using the Thu'um only for worship and enlightenment, rather than violence. Most Nords came to respect this tradition, seeing the Greybeards as living connections to their heroic past. Dragon burial mounds dotted Skyrim's landscape, silent monuments to fallen titans. The few surviving dragons retreated from civilization, living in isolation atop the highest peaks or in the deepest caves. For thousands of years, they remained legends, stories parents told children to teach lessons about hubris and the dangers of tyranny. Most Nords believed dragons had gone extinct, existing only in myth and fading memory. The dragon priests who had entombed themselves remained undisturbed in their ancient temples and tombs. Their Draugr servants performed daily rituals, transferring life force from themselves to their priests, keeping the priests in a state of suspended animation. These servants believed that Alduin would return and resurrect their masters, rewarding the faithful for their eternal vigil. For over 4,000 years, they waited in darkness, guarding secrets and treasures, slowly deteriorating from living humans into the shambling undead creatures that would later terrify adventurers. The dragon cult's architectural legacy remained impressive even in ruin. Temples and tombs scattered across Skyrim displayed the cult's wealth and magical prowess. These structures featured elaborate stone carvings depicting dragons and the animal totems of ancient Nord religion. The bear, dragon, fox, moth, owl, snake, whale, and wolf. The buildings incorporated sophisticated traps and magical wards to protect against intruders. Doors sealed with complex puzzle locks, each requiring a unique dragon claw key to open, kept the inner sanctum safe. Many of the dragon cult's treasures and artifacts survived the ages. Beyond the dragon priest masks, there were staffs, ceremonial daggers, and other magical implements bearing the symbols and power of the cult. These items retained their enchantments across millennia, testimony to the skill of their creators. The walls of cult temples bore inscriptions in the dragon language, words of power that would prove valuable to any dragonborn who could read them. The role of dragon priests in ancient society extended far beyond mere religious leadership. They were the effective rulers of Skyrim, exercising absolute authority over both spiritual and secular matters. A dragon priest could command armies, levy taxes, decree laws, and dispense justice. Their word was law, backed by the implicit threat of their dragon masters. This concentration of power in the hands of a relatively small number of individuals created a rigid hierarchical society where the common people had no voice or agency. Dragon priests possessed formidable magical abilities, far surpassing ordinary mages. They studied arcane arts for centuries, accumulating knowledge and power that few mortals could match. Many priests mastered multiple schools of magic, becoming adept at destruction, conjuration, restoration, and other disciplines. Some achieved such mastery of magic that they transcended normal mortality, even before entombing themselves, becoming leeches through necromantic rituals. The relationship between dragon priests and their dragon masters varied. Some priests served out of genuine faith and reverence, seeing dragons as divine beings worthy of worship. Others were motivated by ambition and the desire for power, viewing service to dragons as a path to their own aggrandizement. A few may have been coerced into service, trapped by circumstances or magical compulsion. Regardless of motivation, once someone became a dragon priest, they were bound to that role for life. Training to become a dragon priest required years or even decades of study and service. Initiates learn the dragon language, magical arts, administrative skills, and the rituals required to communicate with and summon dragons. Only the most talented and dedicated students progressed to the rank of full priest. Of these, only a select few achieved high rank and received the legendary masks of power. The pyramid of the dragon cult was vast at its base but narrow at its peak. The daily rituals performed by Draga servants in the tombs reveal much about dragon cult beliefs. These rituals, which continued for thousands of years after the cult's fall, involved gathering around the sarcophagus of the entombed priest and transferring life force to sustain them. This exchange slowly drained the Draga, but their life force magically regenerated while they rested, allowing the cycle to continue indefinitely. The ritual demonstrates the cult's understanding of necromancy and life magic, as well as their absolute faith that their masters would one day return. Not all who followed the dragon cult were priests. The cult had a complex hierarchy with many levels. Below the priests were lesser officials, administrators, warriors, and common worshippers. These individuals had varying degrees of power and status. Some lived relatively comfortable lives, serving in temples and managing cult properties. Others toiled as laborers, providing the resources needed to maintain the cult's massive infrastructure. At the bottom, were those who had little choice in their service, effectively slaves to the system. The dragon cult's theology centered on the worship of dragons as divine beings and manifestations of the gods. They saw dragons not as gods themselves, but as the earthly forms of deities like Akatosh. This theological framework justified dragon rule. If dragons were divine manifestations, then serving them was serving the gods. This belief system made rebellion against dragons tantamount to heresy, a sin against the natural order. Only when this belief eroded did large-scale resistance become possible. The fall of the dragon cult created a power vacuum in Skyrim. In the wake of the Dragon War, new forms of governance emerged. The hold system that would characterize Skyrim for millennia began to take shape, with Jarls ruling from fortified cities. These new rulers were careful to avoid the tyranny of the dragon cult, knowing that the people would not tolerate oppression after fighting so hard for freedom. The scars of dragon cult rule influenced Nordic political culture deeply, creating traditions that valued martial prowess, honor, and respect for individual liberty. Some scholars debate whether the dragon cult was entirely evil, or whether its reputation has been unfairly blackened by history. These scholars point out that for much of its existence, the cult maintained peace and order across a vast territory. They note that some dragon priests were known for wisdom and fair judgment. However, these arguments rarely convince those who study the cult's later period, when cruelty and oppression became systemic. The mass graves and ruins of destroyed villages speak eloquently to the terror of living under dragon tyranny. The dragon burial mounds scattered across Skyrim stand as monuments to the Dragon War and the faith of the dragon cult. These circular structures, surrounded by standing stones, mark the final resting places of dragons who fell in battle. The cult built these mounds with great care and effort, believing that the dragons buried within would one day rise again. The construction of each mound required tremendous labor, moving massive quantities of earth and stone to create proper tombs for their fallen masters. The total number of dragon mounds in Skyrim is 22 within the province proper, with 2 additional mounds on the island of Solstheim. Each mound contains the remains of a named dragon, their bones preserved through the ages. The dragon cult meticulously recorded the locations of these mounds, though much of that knowledge was lost over time. The Blades, successors to the ancient Dragon Guard, preserve some information about mound locations in a document called the Atlas of Dragons. The Dragonstone found in Bleak Falls Barrow contains a map showing the locations of all dragon burial mounds. On one side of the stone are carvings depicting dragons, while the reverse displays a map of Skyrim with stars marking each mound's location. This artifact proved invaluable to the Blades in the Fourth Era, when dragons began to return. Delphine, one of the last remaining Blades, transcribed the information from the Dragonstone, though her copy proved less accurate than the original stone. Dragon mounds exist in 4 possible states. In their dormant state, they appear covered, looking much like ancient Nordic burial mounds. In this state, the dragon within remains truly dead, its soul still tethered to its bones, but inactive. As the main quest progresses, and Alduin begins his campaign of resurrection, mounds transition to an open state where the earth has been disturbed, but no dragon remains. These represent dragons that Alduin has already resurrected and that have flown away. Some mounds enter a third state where they are opened and a newly resurrected dragon remains nearby, gathering strength or waiting to ambush travelers. These dragons are fresh from resurrection, their flesh recently restored to ancient bones. They are often particularly dangerous because they fight with the desperation of beings who have just returned from millennia of death dreams. The fourth and rarest state occurs when Alduin himself is present at a mound, performing the resurrection ritual. Witnesses to this event see Alduin using his unique shout to call life back into dead bones, speaking in words that only he knows. The resurrection process itself is a sight both terrible and awe-inspiring. Alduin lands at the mound and begins speaking in the dragon language, using words that scholars believe translate to something like soul, flesh, body, or perhaps a more complex phrase about the reunion of spirit and form. A column of mystical energy erupts from the mound, and flesh rapidly grows upon ancient bones. Within moments, a fully formed dragon emerges from the earth, alive once more after thousands of years of death. The experience of resurrection, from the dragon's perspective, remains largely unknown. Do they remember their death? Do they recall the millennia spent as bones in darkness? When they emerge, they seem immediately aware of their surroundings and their situation, suggesting that death for dragons is not oblivion, but rather a strange form of consciousness without physical form. The resurrected dragons recognize Alduin immediately and acknowledge his authority, suggesting that their loyalty and memories remain intact. Not every dragon buried in Skyrim has been discovered. The Atlas of Dragons, while comprehensive, likely did not document every burial site. Some dragons may have been interred in secret locations, their graves deliberately hidden to protect them from desecration. Other burial sites may have been lost to natural disasters, buried under avalanches or swallowed by earthquakes. Some mounds might have been destroyed deliberately by those who wanted to ensure certain dragons would never rise again. The construction techniques used to build dragon mounds show sophisticated engineering. The circular design and ring of standing stones were not merely ceremonial, but served structural purposes, distributing weight and preventing the mounds from collapsing over time. The stones themselves bear faint inscriptions in the dragon language, likely protective wards or prayers for the dragon's eventual resurrection. The craftsmen who built these mounds clearly intended them to last for ages, and their work succeeded admirably. Each dragon mound tells a story. The size of the mound often correlates with the dragon's status and power. High-ranking dragons receive larger, more elaborate burial sites. The placement of mounds also reveals information about the dragon cult's priorities and beliefs. Some mounds are located near major population centers, suggesting these dragons were protectors or rulers of those areas. Others lie in remote wilderness, perhaps marking the sites where significant battles occurred during the Dragon War. The soil composition of dragon mounds differs from surrounding earth. The presence of dragon bones enriches the soil with magical properties, and plants growing on or near mounds sometimes display unusual characteristics. Alchemists prize herbs harvested from dragon mounds for their enhanced potency. Some mounds sprout unique plants found nowhere else, species that may have been deliberately planted by the dragon cult, or that evolved in response to the magical saturation of the soil. Local legends and folklore about dragon mounds abound in Skyrim. Many villages near mounds have stories about the dragons buried there, often exaggerated or fanciful tales that only loosely correspond to historical fact. Some communities hold festivals or perform rituals at nearby mounds, maintaining traditions that date back to the dragon cult era, even though the original meaning has been forgotten. These folk practices reveal how deeply the dragon cult influenced Nordic culture and how long its shadow endures. The Atlas of Dragons, compiled by the scholar Brother Mathnan of the ancient Dragon Guard, represents the most comprehensive written record of dragon burial locations. The Atlas was created during the First Era, likely in the centuries after the Dragon War, when the locations of dragon mounds were still relatively well known. Brother Mathnan travelled across Skyrim, documenting each mound he found, recording the names of the dragons buried there and any relevant historical information. His work preserved knowledge that would otherwise have been completely lost. The Dragon Guard, predecessors to the Blades, took a keen interest in dragon mounds. They monitored the sites, ensured that no cult remnants attempted to perform unauthorized rituals, and studied the remains for information about dragon physiology and weakness. The Dragon Guard maintained watchtowers near some mounds and established protocols for what to do if a dragon somehow managed to resurrect. Their vigilance proved unnecessary for thousands of years, as no dragon rose from the mounds until Alduin's return in 4E 201. Some dragon mounds have additional burials nearby. When a dragon priest died, they were sometimes interred close to the mound of the dragon they served. These secondary burial sites are smaller and often overlooked, but they can contain valuable information and artifacts. The proximity of priest to dragon burial suggests that the cult believed their relationship would continue even in death, that when the dragons rose again, their faithful priests would also be resurrected. The standing stones around dragon mounds are not randomly placed. Each stone's position corresponds to astronomical alignments or ley line intersections. The dragon cult studied cosmology and magical geography extensively, and they incorporated this knowledge into their construction projects. The standing stones may serve as focusing points for magical energy, either to preserve the dragon's remains or to facilitate eventual resurrection. Modern scholars study these alignments, seeking to understand the metaphysical principles the dragon cult employed. The weathering patterns on the standing stones reveal their incredible age. Despite thousands of years of exposure to Skyrim's harsh climate, the stones show remarkably little erosion. This durability suggests they were either crafted from exceptionally hard stone or protected by magical wards that continue to function millennia after their creation. Some stones bear faint tool marks that match no known Nordic crafting techniques, suggesting the involvement of either specialized craftsmen or magical shaping methods. The placement of dragon mounds across Skyrim follows patterns that only become apparent when viewing multiple sites together. Many mounds align with each other, creating geometric patterns across the landscape. These alignments may have served practical purposes, allowing dragon priests to travel efficiently between sites, or they may have had ritual significance. Some scholars propose that the network of mounds formed a massive magical array, perhaps designed to channel energy toward a central location like Labyrinthian. Individual mounds vary in their exact construction details. Some feature multiple rings of standing stones, while others have only a single circle. The number of stones in each circle varies, with some scholars suggesting that the number corresponds to the dragon's age or status. Certain mounds include additional features like carved pillars or altar stones, suggesting they serve ceremonial purposes beyond simple burial. These variations indicate that dragon mound construction evolved over time, or that different dragon priest factions followed different architectural traditions. The depth of dragon burials varies considerably. Some dragons were interred relatively close to the surface, while others lie dozens of feet underground. Deeper burials may have been reserved for particularly powerful dragons, or those whose loyalty to Alduin was strongest. The depth also affects resurrection. Dragons buried deeper seem to take slightly longer to resurrect when Alduin performs his ritual, as if his shout must penetrate more earth to reach the entombed dragon. Archaeological studies of dragon mounds reveal layers of construction. Many mounds were built in stages, with an initial burial followed by additional earth and stonework over subsequent years or decades. This suggests that the dragon cult continued to honor and maintain these sites long after the initial interment. Some mounds show evidence of ritual activity continuing for centuries after the dragon's burial, with offerings left and ceremonies performed to honor the dead dragon and petition for its eventual return. The surrounding landscape near dragon mounds often displays unusual characteristics. Vegetation patterns may differ, with certain plants growing more abundantly, while others avoid the area entirely. Wildlife behavior changes near mounds, with some animals seeming to sense the ancient power contained within and giving the sites wide berth. Conversely, certain predators are drawn to mounds, perhaps attracted by the magical energy or by prey animals that gather near these locations. Weather patterns near dragon mounds can be unpredictable. Some mounds seem to attract thunderstorms or mists, while others remain oddly clear, even when surrounding areas experience poor weather. These meteorological anomalies suggest that the magic saturating the mounds affects local conditions. During the periods when Alduin was actively resurrecting dragons, witnesses reported seeing strange lights and hearing distant roars near mounds that had not yet been opened, as if the dragons within sensed their approaching resurrection. The dragon cult developed elaborate protocols for dragon burial. Written accounts from the First Era describe extensive preparation rituals lasting days or even weeks before the actual interment. The dragon's body would be cleansed with sacred oils, prayers would be intoned in the dragon language, and offerings would be placed with the corpse. The scale and ceremony invested in these burials demonstrates the profound reverence the cult held for dragons, viewing them not as mere powerful beings, but as semi-divine entities deserving of elaborate funeral rites. Some dragon mounds contain more than just the dragon's remains. Burial goods placed with the dragons included weapons, armor, gold, and magical artifacts. These items were meant to honor the dragon and perhaps to serve it in some hypothetical afterlife. When Alduin resurrects a dragon, these items remain in the mound, which is why dragon mounds often contain valuable treasure even after the dragon has risen. Treasure hunters who brave open mounds can find significant wealth, though such expeditions are extremely dangerous due to residual magical protections and the possibility of encountering Draga or other undead guardians. Alduin, the World Eater, stands as the most powerful and significant dragon in all of Tamriel's history. He claims to be the firstborn of Akatosh, the dragon god of time, which would make him literally a fragment of time itself given physical form. His name in the dragon language is Alduin, which means Destroyer Devour Master. This name perfectly encapsulates his cosmic purpose: to end world cycles by devouring the current world, allowing a new one to be born from its ashes. Alduin's scales are black as midnight, a colour so deep it seems to absorb light rather than reflect it. He is larger than any other dragon, his wingspan casting shadows that can darken entire villages. His eyes burn with malevolent intelligence, and when he opens his mouth to speak, reality itself seems to shudder. His Thuum carries a weight and power that other dragons' voices cannot match, for his words are closer to the original language of creation. The prophecy of Alduin's return was preserved in the form of Alduin's Wall, a massive relief carved by the Akaviri Dragon Guard at Skyhaven Temple. The wall depicts the story of the Dragon War and Alduin's banishment, but it also contains prophecy about his eventual return. The prophecy speaks of the last Dragonborn, a hero who would arise when Alduin returned, someone with the power to permanently defeat the World Eater. This prophecy proved accurate when the Dragonborn emerged in 4E201, the same year Alduin returned from his temporal exile. Alduin possesses several unique abilities that set him apart from other dragons. He alone knows the words to resurrect dead dragons, a shout that no other dragon can replicate. This power makes him both a leader and a creator to dragonkind, for he can restore his fellows from death itself. Additionally, Alduin can travel to Sovngarde, the Nordic afterlife, where he devours the souls of dead heroes to increase his power. This ability to consume souls even in the afterlife demonstrates his transcendence of normal limitations. The relationship between Alduin and Paarthurnax is tragically complicated. They are brothers, both ancient, beyond mortal comprehension, both powerful beyond measure. Yet their choices diverged completely. Where Alduin chose tyranny and refused his cosmic purpose, Paarthurnax chose redemption and accepted a new path. Paarthurnax's betrayal of his brother during the Dragon War created a rift that never healed. When they meet again in the Fourth Era, their reunion is brief and hostile, though Paarthurnax clearly still feels the weight of what he did. Alduin's defeat at the hands of the last Dragonborn represents a unique event in history. Unlike his banishment by the ancient heroes, this defeat is final. The Dragonborn absorbs Alduin's soul, or rather appears to, for the actual absorption never occurs. Alduin's soul escapes, fleeing to some unknown realm. This raises profound questions about Alduin's fate. Is he truly dead? Can he ever return? If he is indeed the World Eater, does his apparent destruction mean this world cycle can never properly end? These questions remain unanswered, troubling scholars and theologians alike. Paarthurnax, whose name means ambition overlord cruelty, serves as a living example of the possibility of redemption. He was Alduin's chief lieutenant during the height of dragon tyranny, and by his own admission, he committed terrible atrocities against mankind. The villages he burned, the lives he destroyed, weigh on him still. Yet he chose to change, to fight against his own nature, and in doing so became perhaps the wisest being in all of Skyrim. His appearance reflects his great age. His scales are grey-white, weathered by millennia of wind and weather on the throat of the world. He is smaller than Alduin, but still larger than most dragons, and his body bears the scars of ancient battles. His eyes hold depths of wisdom and sadness, the gaze of someone who has seen too much suffering and caused too much pain. When he speaks, his voice carries the weight of ages. Paarthurnax serves as the leader of the Greybeards, though he remains hidden from most visitors to High Hrothgar. He dwells at the very peak of the throat of the world, in a small area sheltered from the worst winds. There he meditates on the nature of existence and the eternal struggle against his domination instinct. He teaches any who reach him, sharing wisdom accumulated over thousands of years. His teachings focus on the way of the voice, the philosophy that the Thu'um should be used for worship and understanding, rather than violence. The question of whether Paarthurnax should be executed for his ancient crimes causes significant conflict between the Dragonborn and the Blades. Delphine and Esbern, the last remaining Blades, demand his death. From their perspective, Paarthurnax is a dragon and therefore an enemy, regardless of his current behavior. The Dragonborn must choose between the Blades' demands and Paarthurnax's wisdom, a choice that reflects larger questions about justice, redemption, and whether ancient crimes can ever be forgiven. Odahviing, the winged snow hunter, serves as one of Alduin's chief lieutenants after being resurrected. His scales are red as blood, and he is fierce in battle. However, Odahviing proves to be pragmatic rather than ideological in his loyalty. When the Dragonborn captures him in Dragon's Reach, using the ancient trap built by Jarl Olaf One-Eye, Odahviing assesses the situation carefully. He recognizes that Alduin's inability to defeat the Dragonborn suggests weakness in the World Eater's claim to leadership. In a display of pragmatic self-interest, Odahviing agrees to betray Alduin in exchange for his freedom. He acknowledges that the Dragonborn has proven stronger than Alduin, and dragon culture respects strength above all else. His willingness to switch sides is not cowardice, but rather a practical acceptance of new hierarchy. After Alduin's defeat, Odahviing becomes a loyal ally to the Dragonborn, answering their call whenever summoned. This suggests that his loyalty was never to Alduin personally, but to the principle of following the strongest leader. Durnevir, the curse never dying, represents one of the most tragic figures among dragonkind. His deep interest in necromancy led him to the Soulcairn, the realm of the ideal masters, seeking forbidden knowledge. In exchange for learning their dark secrets, he agreed to guard the Soulcairn for what he believed would be a limited time. However, the ideal masters deceived him, and his service became eternal. Over centuries in that grey, lifeless realm, Durnevir's body began to decay and transform, becoming skeletal and necrotic. When the Dragonborn meets Durnevir in the Soulcairn, they find a dragon that is both powerful and pathetic. He retains all his intelligence and pride, but he is trapped beyond hope of escape. His body can no longer survive outside the Soulcairn. If summoned to Mundus, he can exist only temporarily before being pulled back. The Dragonborn can learn powerful shouts from Durnevir, for he remains a master of his art despite his imprisonment. His gratitude for even brief periods of freedom reveals the depth of his suffering. Mimulnir has the distinction of being the first dragon most Dragonborn encounter in active combat. He attacks the western watchtower near Whiterun, marking the first public dragon attack since Alduin's return. His defeat and the Dragonborn's absorption of his soul trigger the revelation of the Dragonborn's nature. The Greybeards sense this event and summon the Dragonborn to High Hrothgar, setting in motion the main quest's central storyline. Mimulnir's death proves that dragons can be killed permanently by the Dragonborn, a fact that terrifies and enrages the other dragons. Saluknir, the Phantom Sky Hunter, provides players with their first witnessing of dragon resurrection. Alduin resurrects him from his burial mound near Kyne's Grove, demonstrating how the World Eater brings his followers back from death. Saluknir emerges confused and disoriented at first, but quickly regains his bearings and attacks the Dragonborn. This encounter teaches players that Alduin is actively resurrecting dragons across Skyrim, turning what might have been isolated dragon encounters into a full-scale crisis. Volthuriel, whose name means Dark Overlord Fire, lurks in the depths of Blackreach, the massive underground Dwemer city. He is hidden unless the player rings the massive bronze sphere called the Great Lift. When summoned by the resonating bell, Volthuriel flies through Blackreach's vast cavern, a dragon dwelling in darkness far from the sky. His presence in Blackreach raises questions about how he came to be there and how long he has dwelt in those depths. Some theorize he fled there during the Dragon War and has lived in isolation ever since. Naslarum and Voslarum are twin dragons that players can encounter on Solstheim. Their names translate to something like Corpse Horror Sleep and Cruel Phantom Sleep, respectively. They burst from beneath frozen lake ice when the Dragonborn approaches certain locations, attacking in coordinated fashion. The fact that they act together suggests dragons' social structures may be more complex than simple dominance hierarchies. These brothers or partners demonstrate that not all dragons are lone hunters. The coordination between Naslarum and Voslarum reveals sophisticated tactical thinking. They time their emergence to catch prey between them, with one attacking from each side to prevent easy escape. Their synchronized movements suggest either telepathic communication or simply such familiarity with each other that they can anticipate their twins' actions. This partnership has likely lasted for millennia, surviving the Dragon War and the long years of hiding that followed. Crosula, the sorcerer Shoutlash, serves the dragon priest Zakrisos on Solstheim. This relationship between dragon and dragon priest continuing into the Fourth Era suggests that old loyalties die hard. Crosulha fights to protect Zakrisos' sanctum, demonstrating that some dragons maintain their connections to the dragon cult even after thousands of years. His appearance and behavior suggest he was never part of Alduin's resurrection campaign, but rather remained in Solstheim independently. The existence of dragons like Crosulha who survived independently from Alduin's return raises interesting questions about the total dragon population. How many dragons managed to survive the Dragon War and subsequent persecution without being buried? How many chose to hide in remote locations, sleeping away the centuries while civilization changed around them? The appearance of dragons not connected to Alduin's resurrection suggests the answer might be more than anyone suspected. Vinteruth, whose name means Shine Terror Rain, was a dragon of particular note in ancient times. According to the Atlas of Dragons, he once ruled a significant portion of eastern Skyrim during the height of dominance. His burial mound lies near Windhelm, suggesting he may have been the dragon most associated with that ancient city. When resurrected by Alduin, Vinteruth immediately sought to reclaim his old territory, attacking settlements and travelers in the region. His aggressive behavior, even among resurrected dragons, suggests his temperament was particularly fierce, even in ancient times. Nahagliv, meaning fury burn wither, displays characteristics common to fire-breathing dragons. His scales carry a distinctly reddish tint, and witnesses report that the air around him shimmers with heat, even when he is not actively breathing fire. Nahagliv's combat style favors aerial attacks, circling high above targets and bombarding them with fire before swooping down to engage in melee. This tactical approach suggests intelligence and patience, waiting to weaken opponents before closing for the kill. Vuljotnak is an ancient dragon lurking near Granite Hill. His name means Darkmoor Eat, a surprisingly uninspiring title for this green dragon. Vuljotnak is one of the many dragons to have reportedly died around the Dragon War. However, conflicting sources create confusion about his actual death. The Atlas of Dragons places his death during the Dragon War, but the ancient Dragon Guard burial mask shows imagery that might depict a Taishi warrior consuming Vuljotnak whole, which would place his death much later, around 1E 2703. This discrepancy highlights how even recorded dragon history contains contradictions and mysteries. The green coloration of Vuljotnak's scales is relatively rare among dragons. Most dragons display red, brown, bronze, or white scales, making green dragons noteworthy. The significance of scale color beyond elemental affinity remains a subject of scholarly debate. Some propose that color indicates lineage, with dragons descended from the same ancient progenitor sharing similar hues. Others suggest color correlates with personality traits or magical abilities beyond simple breath weapons. Volturial, whose name means Dark Overlord Fire, lurks in the depths of Blackreach, the massive underground Dwemer city. He is hidden unless the player rings the massive bronze sphere called the Great Lift. When summoned by the resonating bell, Volturial flies through Blackreach's vast cavern, a dragon dwelling in darkness far from the sky. His presence in Blackreach raises questions about how he came to be there and how long he has dwelt in those depths. Some theorize he fled there during the Dragon War and has lived in isolation ever since. Volturial's adaptation to underground life is remarkable. His eyesight functions perfectly in the near-total darkness of Blackreach's depths, and he navigates the complex cave system with the ease of a creature that has mapped every tunnel and chamber over centuries of habitation. The fungi and crystalline structures of Blackreach do not impede his flight, suggesting either exceptional spatial awareness or perhaps some form of echolocation similar to bats. His long isolation has not diminished his combat capabilities, proving that dragons maintain their power even without regular challenges or conflicts. The question of Volturial's diet is particularly intriguing. Blackreach contains Chorus, Falmer, and various other cave-dwelling creatures, but whether these provide sufficient sustenance for a creature as large as a dragon remains uncertain. Some scholars propose that Volturial enters extended periods of hibernation, sleeping for decades at a time and hunting only occasionally. Others suggest he may have discovered exits to the surface that allow him to hunt in the mountains above before returning to his underground sanctuary. Relonikiv, meaning dominate snow victorious, was known in ancient times for his mastery of frost magic. His scales were almost pure white, making him nearly invisible against snowy landscapes. Legends speak of Relonikiv ambushing travelers in blizzards, appearing from the white-out conditions like a sudden deadly apparition. His breath weapon could freeze solid stone, and stories claim he could summon snowstorms through extended use of his Thuum, though scholars debate whether this represents historical fact or mythical exaggeration. Sarotar, the phantom word servant, holds unique significance as the first dragon to serve Miraak, the first dragonborn. His very name proclaims his status as a servant, unusual for creatures as proud as dragons. Yet Saratar served Miraak willingly during the Dragon War, choosing loyalty to the Dragonborn over loyalty to his own kind. This precedent established that dragons could serve Dragonborn not through domination, but through respect for power and wisdom. When the last Dragonborn defeats Miraak, Saratar acknowledges the player's superiority and offers limited cooperation, though whether this represents genuine respect or mere pragmatism remains ambiguous. The relationship between dragons and Dragonborn is complex and fundamental to understanding both. A Dragonborn is not simply a dragon in mortal form, though they possess the soul of a dragon. Rather, they are beings uniquely positioned between two worlds, combining mortal free will with draconic power. Dragons recognize Dragonborn as kin, but also as threats and challenges. When a Dragonborn slays a dragon and absorbs its soul, they do not destroy that soul, but integrate it into themselves, becoming more powerful and more draconic in the process. Some dragons view this as natural, a form of dominance they can respect. Others see it as the ultimate heresy. Crucikrul, whose name means ancient foe hated, displays particular animosity toward mortals, even by dragon standards. His attacks are characterized by excessive savagery, and he seems to take pleasure in causing destruction beyond what tactical necessity requires. Scholars studying his behavior suggest that Crucikrul may have suffered particularly traumatic experiences during the Dragon War, perhaps losing a mate or close companion to human rebels. His hatred has not diminished over millennia of death, and upon resurrection, he immediately resumed his vendetta against mankind with undimmed fury. Dragon behavior patterns reveal much about their psychology and priorities. Dragons are territorial creatures, claiming large areas as their domains. They often establish lairs in high places like mountain peaks or on word walls, where they can survey their territory and spot approaching threats or prey from great distances. These lairs typically contain treasure, not because dragons particularly value wealth, but because they instinctively collect shiny objects and items taken from defeated foes. When encountering humans, dragons assess whether the person represents a threat or merely prey. Weak or unarmed individuals may be ignored or killed casually, while armed warriors receive more respect and attention. The Dragonborn receive special recognition from dragons, who can sense their draconic soul even at a distance. Dragons often taunt the Dragonborn in the dragon language during combat, treating the fight as both physical battle and war of words. Dragon combat tactics vary between individuals, but follow general patterns. Many dragons prefer to attack from the air, using their breath weapons to strafe ground-based enemies while remaining out of reach of melee weapons. When forced to land, either through exhaustion or dragon rend shout, dragons fight more cautiously, using their full array of physical attacks, including bites, tail swipes, and wing buffets. Some dragons are more aggressive, landing quickly to engage in melee, while others are more patient, circling and wearing down opponents with ranged attacks. The hierarchy among dragons is based primarily on age and power. Elder dragons command more respect than younger ones, and those with notable accomplishments earn additional status. However, this hierarchy is constantly challenged, for dragons cannot resist testing one another. If a dragon perceives another as weak or unworthy of their status, they may challenge them to combat. These duels can be brief or extended, but they always end with one dragon clearly dominant. Dragons possess keen senses that make ambushing them nearly impossible. Their vision is exceptional at all ranges. Their hearing can detect whispered conversations from hundreds of yards away, and they can smell blood from miles distant. This combination of senses makes dragons formidable hunters and extremely difficult to surprise. Some scholars speculate that dragons also have a sixth sense related to the Thuum, allowing them to detect the use of shouts in their territory. When sleeping, dragons enter a state that resembles hibernation more than normal sleep. They can rest for days, weeks, or even months without waking, conserving energy and allowing injuries to heal. However, even while sleeping, dragons maintain a degree of awareness of their surroundings. Loud noises or the approach of large groups will wake a sleeping dragon. This makes dragon lairs dangerous to explore even when the dragon appears to be sleeping. Dragon personalities vary widely despite their shared nature. Some dragons are philosophical and contemplative, willing to engage in conversation and debate. Others are savage and brutal, attacking any perceived threat with overwhelming force. A few dragons display what might be called honor, keeping their word and respecting worthy opponents. Most dragons, however, view mortals as insects, beneath their notice except as potential threats or sources of amusement. The relationship between dragons and magic extends beyond the Thuum. Dragons possess innate magical resistance, making them difficult to harm with spells. They can also sense magical energies, detecting enchanted items, active spell effects, and areas of high magical concentration. This sensitivity to magic may explain why dragons are often found near word walls and other sites of ancient power. Dragons accumulate knowledge over their long existences, and elder dragons possess vast libraries of information in their minds. They remember historical events personally, having witnessed them. They know secrets lost to mortal scholars, locations of forgotten treasures, and the true meanings of ancient texts. However, dragons rarely share this knowledge willingly, viewing it as power to be hoarded like gold. The Thuum abilities that dragons use in combat vary by individual. All dragons can breathe fire or frost, though individual dragons specialize in one or the other. Some dragons can use unrelenting force, the same shout that the dragonborn learns, knocking opponents back with concentrated power. Elder and legendary dragons can use drain vitality, a devastating shout that saps health, stamina, and magicka simultaneously. Alduin alone can use certain unique shouts, including his resurrection shout and a special meteor storm ability. Dragons can be ridden after learning the bend will shout, though this represents a profound act of domination. When bent to the dragonborn's will, a dragon submits temporarily, allowing the dragonborn to mount and direct them in flight. The dragon's resentment at this submission is palpable, and the effect is temporary. However, some dragons like Odaving ally with the dragonborn willingly, allowing themselves to be ridden without magical compulsion. This willing cooperation suggests that dragons can form genuine partnerships when they respect their rider. The souls of dragons contain vast power. When the dragonborn absorbs a dragon soul, they gain immediate understanding of words of power they have already discovered. The soul's knowledge integrates with the dragonborn's consciousness, teaching them instantly how to properly pronounce and understand dragon words. This is why the Dragonborn can learn shout so much more easily than ordinary mortals, who must meditate on words for years to grasp their full meaning. Dragon souls are not consumed when absorbed by a Dragonborn. Rather, they become part of the Dragonborn's larger soul, integrated but not destroyed. This means that in some philosophical sense, every dragon the Dragonborn kills continues to exist within them. Some scholars wonder whether this affects the Dragonborn's personality over time, whether accumulating dozens of dragon souls gradually makes the Dragonborn think more like a dragon. The treasure found in dragon lairs comes from centuries or even millennia of accumulation. Dragons do not create or use tools, so everything in their lairs was taken from elsewhere. Dragon bones and scales are left behind when a dragon dies, making dragon lairs valuable sources of crafting materials. The amount of treasure varies greatly between dragons, with elder dragons possessing more accumulated wealth. Some dragons display specific quirks or characteristics that set them apart. Certain dragons prefer particular types of terrain, like mountains or forests. Others have favorite hunting grounds or territories they patrol regularly. A few dragons seem to enjoy the sound of their own voice, talking extensively even when not strictly necessary. These individual variations remind observers that dragons, despite their shared nature, are distinct beings with their own histories and preferences. Dragon encounters can occur anywhere in Skyrim's wilderness after the main quest progresses past a certain point. Random dragons will spawn and attack the player or nearby settlements. These encounters make travel more dangerous, but also provide opportunities to harvest dragon souls and materials. The frequency of dragon attacks increases as the player progresses through the main quest, reaching a peak around the time of the final confrontation with Alduin. The restoration of dragons to Skyrim in the Fourth Era represents a fundamental shift in the world's balance. For thousands of years, dragons were extinct or nearly so, existing only in legend and hidden lairs. Their return changes everything, forcing all of Tamriel's inhabitants to reckon with beings of immense power who remember the world before written history. Even after Alduin's defeat, dragons remain in the world, suggesting that dragonkind will continue to be a factor in Tamriel's future. The fate of dragons after Alduin's defeat remains uncertain. Some dragons like Paarthurnax and Odahviing have sworn not to terrorize mortals, choosing peaceful coexistence. Others remain hostile, attacking travelers and settlements. The Blades seek to exterminate all dragons, viewing them as inherently dangerous. The Greybeards advocate for peace, believing that dragons can choose their own paths. The tension between these viewpoints ensures that the dragon question will shape Skyrim's politics for generations to come. The philosophical implications of dragon survival extend beyond immediate safety concerns. Dragons remember the world as it was, thousands of years ago. They possess first-hand knowledge of events that mortals know only through fragmentary records and legends. This makes them living repositories of history, though their perspectives are colored by their own biases and the limitations of their unchanging nature. Some forward-thinking scholars have proposed attempting to record dragon testimony about ancient events, but the difficulty of finding cooperative dragons makes this largely theoretical. Dragon intelligence manifests in unexpected ways. While all dragons possess cunning and tactical ability, some display interests that seem at odds with their predatory nature. A few dragons have been observed spending hours examining ancient ruins or studying magical phenomena with what appears to be genuine intellectual curiosity. Dunavir's obsession with necromancy represents an extreme example, but it suggests that dragons can develop specialized interests and expertise beyond simple combat and domination. This intellectual capacity, combined with their immortality, means dragons could theoretically master any field of study given sufficient time and motivation. The emotional lives of dragons remain largely mysterious to mortal observers. Dragons clearly experience pride, anger, and satisfaction from victory. Whether they feel more complex emotions like love, grief, or compassion is debatable. Parthenax's teachings suggest dragons can develop empathy and understanding, but this may require conscious effort and extended meditation. The relationship between Naslarum and Voslarum hints at something like brotherhood or partnership, but whether this represents genuine affection or merely mutual respect remains uncertain to scholars who have observed their coordinated hunting patterns. Dragons guard their inner feelings as jealously as they guard their hoards, making definitive conclusions about their emotional capacity difficult to establish. Communication between dragons extends beyond spoken language. When dragons meet, they engage in complex displays involving wing positioning, head movements, and subtle vocalizations that carry meaning incomprehensible to mortals. These displays establish dominance hierarchies, communicate intentions, and convey information efficiently. Two dragons can exchange considerable information through such displays without ever speaking a word, making their interactions appear like elaborate dances to mortal observers. The recovery time between shouts varies not only based on the shout's complexity, but also on the dragon's power and current state. A well-rested elder dragon can use powerful 3-word shouts in relatively quick succession, while a wounded juvenile dragon might require extended periods between even simple shouts. Fatigue, injury, and distraction all affect a dragon's ability to focus the mental and spiritual energy required for the Thu'um. In extended battles, dragons must carefully manage their shout usage, balancing immediate tactical needs against the risk of exhausting their ability to use the voice. Dragons can detect lies through subtle cues that mortals cannot perceive. Their acute senses allow them to hear changes in heartbeat and breathing that accompany deception. More importantly, based on accounts from those who have attempted to deceive dragons and failed, dragons seem able to sense intent through mechanisms that may be partially magical. This ability makes deceiving a dragon extremely difficult, though not impossible. A sufficiently skilled liar with complete emotional control might manage it, but most mortals find their falsehoods instantly exposed when dealing with dragons. Whether this represents true supernatural insight or simply exceptional observational skills honed over millennia remains a topic of scholarly debate. The concept of dragon honor is complex and alien to mortal understanding. Dragons respect strength, cunning, and dominance. A dragon might spare an opponent who impresses them with their courage or skill, not out of mercy, but because such an opponent deserves recognition. Conversely, a dragon might kill someone who technically defeats them through trickery, viewing such victory as dishonorable and therefore invalid. Dragon honor has nothing to do with fairness or kindness. It relates purely to the proper exercise of power. Territorial disputes between dragons can escalate into deadly combat, though such fights are relatively rare. Dragons prefer to avoid unnecessary conflict with others of their kind, recognizing that such battles risk mutual destruction. When dragons do fight each other, the battles are awesome and terrible to behold. The sky itself becomes a battlefield as dragons circle, diving and grappling with each other, while unleashing the full power of the Thu'um. These aerial duels can last for hours and cause tremendous collateral damage to the landscape below. The relationship between dragons and the elements they breathe goes beyond simple affinity. Fire-breathing dragons seem more comfortable in warm climates, while frost dragons prefer cold regions. However, this preference is not absolute, and dragons can thrive in any environment. Some scholars propose that a dragon's elemental affinity reflects something about their essential nature, with fire dragons embodying rage and destruction, while frost dragons represent cold calculation and patience. However, individual dragons defy such generalizations, proving that elemental affinity is only one facet of their complex personalities. Dragons possess regenerative abilities that, while not instantaneous, are remarkable. Given time to rest, dragons can heal from wounds that would be fatal to mortals. Broken bones knit back together, torn wing membranes regrow, and according to fragmentary accounts from dragon hunters of ages past, even severed limbs can eventually regenerate, though this process takes months or years. This regeneration is not magical healing in the conventional sense, but rather appears to be an expression of the dragon's immortal nature, their bodies constantly attempting to restore themselves to their ideal state. However, as no modern scholar has been able to observe this process directly, the full extent and limitations of dragon healing remain matters of inference rather than documented fact. The lifespan of dragons is effectively infinite, barring violent death. No dragon has ever died of old age, and even the most ancient dragons show no signs of senescence or declining abilities. If anything, dragons grow more powerful with age as they accumulate knowledge and refine their skills. This eternal youth is both blessing and curse, granting dragons unlimited time to master their abilities, but also condemning them to witness the rise and fall of civilizations, the deaths of any mortal companions, and the endless repetition of historical cycles. Dragon memory is nearly perfect, especially for events they consider significant. A dragon can recall conversations from centuries ago with perfect clarity, describe battles fought millennia in the past in exacting detail, and navigate terrain they last saw during the Merethic era. This perfect memory means dragons never truly forget grievances, making them dangerous enemies who might wait centuries for the perfect opportunity for revenge. It also means dragons accumulate vast libraries of experiential knowledge that would be invaluable to scholars if they could be convinced to share it. The social structures of dragon society, such as they are, revolve around power and respect, rather than affection or kinship. Dragons acknowledge superiors and dominate inferiors, but they do not form communities or permanent alliances except under exceptional circumstances. The Dragon War represented one such exception, when dragons united under Alduin's leadership. However, even then, the alliance was based on recognition of Alduin's power, rather than genuine unity of purpose. Without a powerful leader to unite them, dragons naturally scatter and pursue individual agendas. Dragons demonstrate remarkable adaptability in combat, learning from opponents and adjusting tactics mid-battle. A dragon that sees an opponent successfully dodge its breath weapon might switch to physical attacks or attempt to reposition for a better angle. Dragons that encounter spellcasters quickly learn to interrupt casting with well-timed shouts or attacks. This tactical flexibility, combined with their natural advantages of flight and overwhelming power, makes dragons extraordinarily difficult opponents to defeat. The relationship between dragons and the Thu'um operates on principles that mortal scholars struggle to fully understand. For dragons, shouting is as natural as breathing. They do not study words of power or meditate on their meanings as mortal tongues must. Instead, dragons instinctively understand the dragon language at a fundamental level that mortals can only approximate. This innate comprehension means dragons can improvise variations on shouts, combine words in novel ways, and express subtle nuances through their voice that mortal users of the Thu'um cannot replicate. Dragons can sense the presence of other dragons at considerable distances, though the mechanism for this detection remains mysterious. Some scholars propose dragons can feel disturbances in the flow of magical energy caused by another dragon's presence. Others suggest dragons communicate through very low-frequency sound waves that travel for miles below the range of mortal hearing. Still, other researchers point to the Thu'um itself, proposing that dragons unconsciously emit a sort of draconic signature that others of their kind can detect. Whatever the mechanism, historical accounts consistently indicate that dragons are rarely surprised by the approach of another dragon, giving them time to prepare for potential conflict or negotiation. The hoards that dragons accumulate serve multiple purposes beyond simple greed. The treasure represents a physical manifestation of the dragon's power and success, a tangible record of victories and conquests. The accumulation and protection of treasure also provides dragons with a sense of purpose during the long years of their existence. For creatures that do not need to eat frequently and have no natural predators, gathering and guarding treasure gives structure and meaning to immortal life. Dragon interactions with mortal mages are particularly interesting. Dragons recognize magical ability and seem to respect skilled spellcasters more than ordinary warriors. A mage capable of impressive feats might earn a dragon's attention, if not respect. Some ancient texts speak of dragons who took mortal mages as students or servants, though such arrangements were always fraught with danger. The dragon's pride and the mage's ambition inevitably created tension, and such partnerships rarely ended well for the mortal involved. The future of dragonkind in Tamriel remains an open question. With Alduin defeated and dragon resurrection ended, the total dragon population is fixed. Each dragon that dies permanently reduces their numbers. Whether dragons can overcome their nature sufficiently to coexist with mortals, or whether ancient hatreds and inherent domination instincts will inevitably lead to renewed conflict, time alone will reveal. The choices made by dragons like Paarthurnax and Odahviing in the present era may determine whether dragonkind has a future beyond eventual extinction. So concludes our journey through 135 facts about the dragons of Skyrim. From their divine origins to their complex language, from the rise and fall of their ancient civilization to their return in the Fourth Era, dragons remain among the most fascinating and powerful beings in all of Tamriel. These scaled titans, eternal and unchanging, yet capable of wisdom and even redemption, embody both the terror of absolute power and the hope that even the mightiest can choose a better path. May your dreams tonight be filled with a rush of wind beneath dragon wings and the echoes of the Thuum across ancient mountains, carrying you gently into peaceful rest. Thank you for journeying with me tonight, Cozy Nights. If this story helped you rest, consider leaving a like. It helps other weary travelers find their way to our fireside. And remember, there are many more tales waiting for you here by the fire. So don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our next adventure. Until next time, sleep peacefully and have a cozy night.